Welcome to Collaboration Conversations. I'm your host, Regina Partain-Bergman, CEO of Bridgeport Strategy. This has been such an amazing journey doing these collaboration conversations show. I have met the most amazing people in the world. And tonight is no different. We have people from all around the world tonight. We are really spread out across the globe. My co-host tonight, though, is somebody I'm very excited about. Because we're going to be doing some projects together and collaborating. We're already in one and we see more on the horizon. So I want to introduce briefly my co-host tonight, John North. John is the founder of Evolve Global Publishing. John, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Regina. Thanks, guys.
It's great to have you here. John, would you please share with us a bit about your journey, who you serve, and why that's important to you?
Sure. And I think one of the things that we're talking about today is obviously collaboration, and we're doing a lot of books. So interesting enough, the guys that are all in the room have all done books with us. So basically I bought some books along just to show, like, this is Ken's book, Richard's book.
Awesome.
And Nick's book, shameless promotion. The other two books are coming out for the other guys. So there you go. So
and you and I are working on a book project as well.
Yeah, exactly. So they're all books. So if you're going to talk about books, I suppose. So basically, I started actually when I was like 15 or something. I wanted to be a journalist, and I got talked out of it. So they said, "Oh, it's too hard. You shouldn't want to do that." So I sort of went and got a work job in the bank instead. But what happened was that around about 40, I decided I wanted to write a book, and so I did this book and realized it was actually, because it's changed a lot. Previously, you had to go and get a publisher and all that kind of stuff. So I sort of thought, "Oh, you can publish your own book now." And so I went to do my first book, and then I sort of got addicted to it. And then we found out it was the best marketing tool we could use for a client, because if they wrote a book, they could write about their business and they could use that as leverage to talk about their business, and much better off than just trying to write a website or a brochure and stuff. So we sort of got in the world of books, and we've probably done about 150 books since then, and probably about 3,500 bestseller campaigns. And that's only in 9 years. But the idea was that we wanted to kind of tell people stories. And it's quite amazing when you see the result of a book in some cases when we do it. It's like some people get some pretty amazing things out of it. And so that's kind of what I've ended up doing. I ended up kind of being a pseudo journalist in the end, and sort of like doing other people's stuff as well. So we've done about 9 books now. And so I'm trying to do one a year. I think I'll get to 10. I might stop. But so that's basically my background in terms of what we did with books. We do a lot of different businesses, but probably business about 35 years. But every time I want to launch a business, I write a book about that business. So it's a lot easier than anything else. So I guess that's kind of where we've got to now, and the ability to leverage it too, to understand how it works. And I have a lot of people say to me, "Oh, the book didn't work for me," or whatever. So you obviously don't understand how the game is played.
Exactly.
And I think that's what you got to understand, is that books are not what you think they are. And like anything, right? And I think you've got to leverage it properly. And I think a lot of people just think, "Oh, well, I'll put it on Amazon and never happens, so that's it," But
yeah,
you got to do the work like anything else. And that's why I've done a lot of marketing around and trying to build platforms for authors and things like that to try and help them, because we realize that actually selling the book's harder than writing it.
Yeah, and keeping it selling, right?
Exactly, yeah, and keeping that momentum going, because as I said, I think I said the other day, most people are exhausted by the time they've written their book. So they don't want to actually do anything because they're too tired, and so it's like you got to keep that momentum going, and it gets boring after a while because you think, "Oh, I want to do another book, right? I've got a client keeps writing books, and it's like, I'm going to do another book, and it's like, well, hang on a minute, what about the first child?" So yeah, so that's basically what we come from. Is like I just built an entire system around writing books and sort of helping people get a message out, and sometimes it's incredible messages. Like we've had people who've had cancer that have, had very slim chance of surviving and survived it, and done a book while they were actually getting chemo. Like that's, quite amazing what happens. So some of the stories you get
very inspiring.
Yeah, so actually making a difference, you know what I mean? Like I think that's hard for most businesses, to actually make a difference in people's lives.
Yeah.
So if you can do that, that's kind of what we do. So yeah.
So to some degree, yours is be careful what you ask for. You wanted to be a journalist, and now you are what you called a pseudo-journalist, right?
Yeah. So it's funny. It must be in the genes, because my son likes writing articles, blog articles. So maybe it's like,
I love it.
It's always there. I just didn't realize it.
Awesome. John, would you please introduce each of our guests and have them share a bit of their journey, who they serve and why?
Okay. Do you want me to do one at a time or
one at a time, please? Yes.
Okay. So easy to remember. I'll do this from my right, so I can see that. Remember what I've done. So Scott Bywater from Elite Marketing and Copywriting that sells, I think, from memory.
Yeah.
That's
it.
Yeah. So I met Scott got online on Zoom stuff. So basically, we've sort of been backwards and forwards collaborating a lot in the last few years. So I guess Scott can tell you a bit more about that because I don't want to steal his thunder.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So yeah, I sort of got involved in. I was initially involved in back in my teens in sales, and then I went to a Jay Abraham seminar at age of 17, and my mind sort of exploded, and I'm like, it's so cool, and there's so many different ways you can do it, and all that. So that was my sort of the start of, I guess, my fascination and my interest in marketing. And then later on, I started a business. I think about 24. I started a hairdressing salon where I was doing quite a bit of copywriting as a part of that. To bring in clients and that sort of thing. Then one day, my wife, after moving on to marketing consulting, she saw a job for a copywriter and women's intuition, or whatever you want to call it. She's like, "You got to go for that. You got to go for that job." So then long story short, I didn't get the job, but I did get the confidence. The copywriting manager loved me, but the HR manager didn't, because my career wasn't like the typical up until then. There was lots of chops and changes and starts and stops. And so I got into copywriting. And later on, I really found a love for email because I went to a Matt Fury. I think I saw Matt Fury speak, or and then I bought one of his courses, and he's like, write an email a day. So I built my business on writing an email a day for over a decade, and have done launches since then that have brought in in excess of many six-figure launches. We've done launches that have done $500,000 in a week. And last year we even did one that, I think it was last year, in the last 2 years, we did one that made over 7 figures. So I'm very passionate about email marketing and collaboration. That's how John and I met, through a group called Elite Marketers. I realized many years ago that I don't always sell to people as much as I sell through people, through collaborations, relationships, and partnerships. And I thought by getting a group together in the marketing niche, that could really facilitate that process for everyone. So yeah, that's a bit about my journey.
I love that. And I love that, selling through people, through those collaborations. That's awesome.
Yeah.
John?
Cool. All right. Backing down the list. Next one's Richard Ray, who works for me. We kind of ran into each other. I think he was a guest on one of our shows, and sort of like tweaked an interest. And so I got to talk to this guy. I found out he was in Vegas. So basically I had a chat and we sort of clicked. So he's been working, I think, it must be come up 6 months or longer now. Been working for us.
It's a year now, John. It's a year.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Ask me on service leave soon. So he hosts the AI show for me. He does the Evolvepreneur after our show for me, and we do a lot of other collaboration with AI and all sorts of things. So it's been a very interesting journey because we're both like checking things out and figuring out new stuff, bleeding edge and cutting edge, right? And if you go bleeding edge, you cut a lot. So and so Richard's got a very interesting background in terms of TV and stuff like that. So I'll hand it over to Richard to sort of talk about it. But yeah, it's quite so we sort of we have a lot of fun together. We haven't getting our work done half the time. So
well, thanks for that intro, John. So as John said, we met. I was originally on a podcast with one of John's other hosts, and it was about augmented reality. And off the back of that, we got chatting, and I asked, can I have a go? And ended up podcasting. And now I think we're up to around 200 podcasts, give or take, that I've done for, Evolvepreneur. So it's been a really exciting journey. I've learned a lot as well. But if I was to describe myself, as John said, I have worked mainly in the media world. I've worked for companies like Microsoft. I've worked for BSkyB in the UK, Foxtel in Australia, ABC, all these sorts of organizations. And it's always about making new technology understandable. When something new comes along and people are trying to make it so that they know how to use it and what they can use it for, I'm usually somebody that gets a phone call. So it works really well. I describe myself as a poly nerd. So you might have heard the term polymath, which is somebody who's a genius at lots of different levels and they've got a really high IQ. That's not me. I do not have a high IQ by any stretch of the imagination, but I am nerdy about lots of different things to extreme levels. So I can just pull all these things together. And when it comes to, you know, who do I serve and who do I help? Look, my point with the AI show in particular is to help people understand that AI isn't scary. It is incredibly useful. In fact, I just completed a podcast a few minutes ago with a breast cancer survivor who's using AI, an AI app, to help women actually make sure they get the right treatment and understand what some of the scary terms that they might get in a diagnosis actually mean. So for me, that's a very important. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I like hearing the different ways to use it.
Absolutely.
It's an amazing tool for sure.
And people shouldn't be afraid of it. It can be, it can do wonderful things.
Yeah, absolutely. John?
Cool. All righty. So on to Ken Wood, who's runs Speaker Alchemy Network. As far as I'm aware, is the only business he runs. He probably runs half a dozen other ones for me as well, like we all do. I think I met Ken via Elite Marketing, I think, and he runs another group that's quite similar to the same sort of concepts that as far as an online thing. And we've done a lot of presentations for Ken along the way. Usually get this mad email the night before, says, can you whip in and do a presentation? Someone's pulled out of the group. So, and then we helped Ken write a book for the actual group, which was Guest Speaker Success. So that's, I guess that's a good example of collaboration, is that we got them all to write a chapter in that book, and Ken's going to use that as a way of leveraging, obviously, his business as well. So I guess that's about all I can tell you about Ken. Ken can tell you the rest.
Right. So, it was just coming up to 20 years ago that I got into the speaking business via my wife. She had a business in that space, which was really taking off at the time. And she said, I sold out of my OT business. So she said, come and help me manage this thing. It needed some structure and systems, that sort of stuff, which is my forte. So we had that business. We ran that business for about another 10 years, I think, at that point, and which was great. We're promoting speakers, doing events around Australia, New Zealand mainly, but also UK and Ireland, a couple of other smaller countries. And that's very much a cooperative game. It's with each speaker, it's like, who else has the audience for this speaker, who we could put a marketing partnership together to promote it. Which other speakers got some complimentary offer, who could speak on their stage or add something into their back end offering to make it better, that kind of thing. It's very much, and in fact, the whole reason we went into the UK is because one of our best marketing partners in Australia was English, and he announced that he was moving home to the UK. And we said that. So anyway, so we sat down with him and worked a deal out for him to help us open up there. So we tapped into his database, but also his referral partners that he introduced us to open up the London market first and go from there. So it would have been a much harder entry to the UK without him sort of on the ground spearheading it for us. But anyway, so that was some time ago. More recently, we've been doing the Speakers Alchemy Network, which is the only group for speakers who sell from the stage and sell on webinars. So it's geared around that business model. And the other thing I'm doing is the Client Flow, a SaaS platform for marketing automation and sales. As a result of my marketing consulting over the last decade or so, I noticed that everyone had this sort of mess of different software tools. And when I saw the opportunity to sort of consolidate that down to one easy to use piece of software, I went, okay, this is fantastic. This is just what I love to do, to bring some structure and systems into the typical small business and help them be more organized and effective with their marketing.
We all need it.
There you go, Ken. I knew you had a couple of businesses on the side. All right, we're on to Nick. I think I met Nick via another client who'd done like 4 books with us, and Nick wanted to do a book about called Executive Loneliness, and that was one of the subjects he was talking about. And it's quite an interesting subject in some respects, because a lot of entrepreneurs are lonely, and so is that executive level to a degree as well. You can't sort of be friends with the lower working class, because what happens is you end up being their friend and then not their boss. So he was talking about all that kind of stuff, and it was quite coincidental that we kind of wrote this book, and then he I think he said a BGM network or something. But basically, we sort of did a book around that subject matter. So I think Nick's been some interesting scenario in the last few years. He's running a live.
John, we're having some issues with your audio. Sorry about folks. This is live. Forgive us. It's all good.
Well, we're going to try and switch out the audio and try. Any better?
Oh, yes, much. Thank you.
Yeah, so Nick was running a live network. Everybody comes to an event, and basically then along come the pandemic. So that would have been fun, I'm sure, because basically nobody's going to touch anybody for a couple of years there. So and certainly in places like Singapore where they have very high population. So yeah, so I'll let Nick talk about his background. He's got a very interesting kind of backstory as well. So.
Thanks for that, John. Yeah, so indeed we worked on the first book, now working on the second book. But the first one really, really helped me in, as John said before, about, launching a business with a book. I had a business already running, and I was actually just looking at the company brochure, or like a sales brochure or marketing brochure. But that's when the idea came up, and I saw basically the book is a very expensive business card, and if I look back at the investment, it has paid off multiple times. And not only is the book still selling well today, it's really a tool for help people who are struggling and on the way to burnout, people who feel isolated in the workplace. And I've been on 120 podcasts myself around the world talking around the book, and I still have many more to go. Most of these shows are in the US, and that's where the book also sold really well. It was topping both mental health and men's health categories. And the fact that it was really putting me into the men's health side of things is now a space that I'm working on. I'm setting up confidential men's group. Women has done this so well. There's so many women networks there. But where do the men have to go to talk about their challenges with relationships and their thoughts and feelings? So now the second book we start to work on, and it's actually on my to-do list to write it over, complete it, I should say, the next sort of 2-3 months, and hopefully have something out there in a few months.
Awesome. Do you have a title for the new book yet?
We've been working on that for a while. So it is indeed about vulnerability, safe spaces, and really to take the conversation to the next level. Yeah.
Awesome. It's a very needed subject, all of that, because I can remember first moving into management years ago and saying to myself driving home one day, it really is lonely at the top.
Yeah, you find out the wrong way usually.
That's what Mick Jagger says, right?
Yeah.
All righty, so on to Robert Smith. And we only probably met a few months ago, I think.
We did.
So so Robert's got a few businesses on the side too, I think, as we go through. So he's a PR and a business, what we call publicist and business expert or consultant, I think, from memory. So he does a lot of PR work and does he's involved in a lot of coaches and things like that. So it's got great collaboration in terms of, because Robert's doing some books with us called Influence in Action, which is a book series. So that's coming. First book's coming out soon. So basically, we've been working together to do that. And I guess I'll turn it over to Robert to tell you about his background, because we haven't spoken enough times to figure out what's going on with us. Spent too much time putting out fires.
we have been, yeah, but they're all out now, hopefully. And it's funny because it spent about 5 years searching for John until I finally found him. We did a number one book 5 years ago with another publisher out of London. And it worked out very well for us because we were able to top The Wolf of Wall Street. His sales book came out at the same time ours did. And we've got the little screenshots from Amazon like John does, where it shows us at number one and him at number two. And oddly enough, over the years, I've come in direct competition with him a lot. And I've had owners of financial service firms say, well, we're thinking about going with, Jordan Belfort. And I say, that's fine. If you want to spend 10 times the money for second-rate work, go right ahead. And they say, well, what do you mean second-rate? So I show the screenshot where he's number two all over the world and we're number one. And that, that's enough to close the deal. We did 8 out of 8 last year that way. And it's funny. So the way I started was just in financial services. I've been doing it for 35 years. I hate to admit that I'm that old, but I was fortunate to be number one worldwide with Mutual of New York, number one worldwide with AXA Financial out of Paris, the Equitable out of Atlanta with a combined workforce of about 220,000 with those 3 companies, and hit number 1 with them all at the same time. And then, as fate would have it, someone rear-ended my car going about 60 miles an hour, broke my neck, broke my back, broke my spine. So I had to shut everything down. I had 4 offices in 3 states and just had to close everything down because I couldn't walk for a while. And I thought, if I'm going to spend the rest of my life in a wheelchair, maybe I should learn to write. So I got simultaneous screenwriting degrees at UCLA on the West Coast here in the States, and then Full Sail on the East Coast. I was fortunate to finish top of my class with both of those. So I did a little bit of that, but that's helped me with my content writing for my clients. So I've been doing business consulting, mostly with financial services firms, and doing a lot of their corporate documentaries and their television commercials and things. So that's worked out. And then I was fortunate enough to run across Dr. Robert Cialdini, who's from Arizona State, wrote the book Influence in 1984. I think it sold 5 million copies, something like that. And he was instrumental. That book helped me reach number 1 with all those companies. So I decided to co-found his institute with him over the last year. And we just came back from a conference with him. So he partners with a lot of coaches and things. I don't do any coaching, but the principles that he works with have been great in my career, and they've been really successful with all of my clients. So that's why we're writing Influence in Action through John. We've got about 15, 20 authors coming in right out of the gate. And then hopefully we'll do 1 a quarter with John. But it's just amazing what we've been able to do with our clients. So on the PR side, we help them with their authority. So everyone wants to get booked. We get everyone on all the major television networks in the United States. In a single day, we can get them press and get them on all the websites of all the major American television networks. And we do some worldwide as well. But that gives people the authority to be able to put the logos on from ABC, NBC, Fox, WGN, what have you. And we survey all of our clients because, like Peter Drucker says, what doesn't get measured doesn't get improved. So with every client, we want to know, what are you selling right now? And then after we've done our work, how has that improved your business? So in 2023, our financial service firms, we took on 8 new clients with an average size of 17 reps apiece. And we found their combined closing rate was 51% before we added that authority piece. For under $1,000, I think it was, we got each firm on all those television networks. And within weeks, they were up to 77% closing. So their average rep was earning, I think, $165,000 in the firm. And now they're each making $250,000 on average. So, each firm is $1.5 million to $2 million increase just from that $1,000 investment. So those are the kind of things we do, and it's been working out great.
Wow.
Awesome.
Wow. Okay, enough said. Let's go home. Goodness gracious. I feel like I am in a room full of true greatness here. And just really, John, thank you for bringing all these folks to the show. So you are all experts at collaboration, right? Every one of you is collaborating. And we've got John here with this springboard of collaborative books. And then every one of you, of course, have participated in that type of project. But it also sounds like your businesses are truly collaborative. Your successes are collaborative. Whether it's, starting off with your spouse and collaborating with them, or, wherever you've started. So let's give some advice today then. Let's give some advice. What would you say to someone who's never really embraced collaboration? Maybe they're a small business owner and, maybe not just starting, but a small business owner who's had some success. What would you say to them to help them see how collaboration can impact the success of their business and steps they can take? Let's just kind of explore that a bit. And everyone feel free to unmute and contribute. And whoever would like to go first, just let me know.
I can go first if you like, get that out of the way.
All right, John.
Interesting enough, what I did when I was working around Sydney areas, I wanted to try and connect to people. So I actually started a podcast, and I'd go out to their site and I'd record them. And I'd never been on a podcast before. And I was basically just going through the chamber and just recording everyone, building relationships with them. So it cost nothing except a bit of fuel to go see them. and you'd meet those people in their businesses and record conversations with them, ask them a bunch of questions. And so we did like 30 or 40 of them. So I think that if you want to collaborate with someone, you just go and talk to people, and podcasting will get you in the front door, because most people never say no to a podcast.
Right.
So if you want enough, it costs them virtually nothing to do. To start with is probably the best way to do it, I reckon.
And a key word that you said there was building relationships with them, right? And isn't that really a starting place? It's really about the relationships that we can build.
If they don't know, like, and trust you, there's nothing else is going to happen out of that one. So
you're done.
when you spend half an hour talking about them, then that's the same as a sales call, but at the end of the day, but you're actually getting deeper in the relationship. So
exactly,
I think it worked really good for me. I mean, I stopped doing it because a lot of them couldn't afford me, so I went onto LinkedIn and started getting people out and then doing Zoom calls in comparison. But I think if anybody wants to start quick, and that's probably the best way I would reckon do it.
Would be to start a podcast. Okay. Who else?
Just to leverage off what John just said about the podcast, what most people don't realize right now is the Internet Movie Database, IMDb, which in my opinion is the #1 way to get you top of Google search. Now, if you do podcasts, you can get a listing on IMDb, and we specialize with setting those up for people, and it's super inexpensive. And to give an example, with my name being Robert Smith, and then Robert J. Smith, which is the same middle initial as the lead singer from The Cure, who was in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And then I've got NFL football players, anthropologists, tons of super famous people with my name. But the way I branded with my middle initial, if you Google search me, I always end up at the top, even above Robert Smith from The Cure, who's also in the database because he does a lot of movie soundtracks and things. But I rank higher than he does there, as well as SEO search. And it's just a way of being able to position your profile through the Internet Movie Database, which we've mastered over the past 15 years. And if you're on podcast, it'll immediately get you qualified and get you in there. You don't have to be on TV.
Wow.
You don't have to do films, but we can help you do all that as well.
Amazing. I never even thought about that. My husband is an absolute IMDb fan. I mean, he is, we can't watch a movie without him turning, pausing it to go look up something on IMDb.
Sure, it's Google sometimes because you get a lot of misinformation, but if you can get the movie up or whatever and find out the actor and stuff like that was that previously, right?
Yeah, well, it's funny because my oldest daughter years ago, when she was in, I think, middle school, is the one who brought me to IMDb. Then I started doing a lot of television, so I started adding it. And she's the one responsible for bringing me there, long time ago.
Wow.
And she's a big fan of Robert Smith and The Cure. So every time she Google searches, she gets mad at me. How dare you rank ahead of him? And then she'll go on IMDb. How dare you rank ahead of him? What are you thinking? You're responsible for it.
It's your fault.
That's right.
It's all your fault.
I'll just jump in from the other side of actually interviewing people on podcasts. And one of the recurring themes that I found when I listen to people who have become successful, because a lot of the podcasts I do are with entrepreneurs, is they do two things. Well, they do lots of things, but two things that really stand out in this case is, first of all, they are willing to let go. So they're on that transitional period where they're being, they've started up the business on their own, but now they've got to get other people in to take that company to the next level.
Right.
But the other thing, and this is super, super important, and this is really one of my personal themes of inclusion as well, is everybody can have something that can help your company and help your business. And that level of collaboration and fostering an environment where everybody feels that they can express their opinion and do it in a constructive, supportive way without being dismissed in any sort of way, it could literally save your business. It could be that
Absolutely.
one idea that could turn things around for you. And that's something I've seen on a regular basis. And I've seen the other side of it as well in companies I've worked at, where people have smart ideas, or, they are, their skin's a different color, or, it's a woman or whatever. It doesn't matter what it is. They get dismissed for whatever reason. Yeah. And that one idea could have literally saved a company.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's a really interesting thing with collaboration and networking. Like I come from a very direct response background, and I remember early in my career, I wasn't really into networking or collaboration or anything like that. Then I picked up a book called The 80-20 Manager by Richard Koch. And in that book, he talked about, I forget which color was which, but he talked about the green lottery tickets and the red lottery tickets. He said you can only have 1 or 2 red lottery tickets. That's like, I don't know, being your profession, like John's a book writer, or I'm in copywriting. Like, I'm not going to be a copywriter and a lawyer and a doctor, and I'm not going to be like 5 different professions. So you got limited lottery tickets that you can have there. He said on the networking side, you can have literally unlimited. And anyway, I'm sitting there, and I was on holidays in Fiji at the time, and I started to write down where all my best clients came from. And 80% of them you went through and you're like, oh, that actually came from networking. But it wasn't like networking like, I meet, Nick on this call, and I call him up afterwards and try to sell to him as an example. It was networking where it's like 7, 8, 9 people deep. So it's like, I meet Ken and he introduces me to John, and John introduces me to Nick, and Nick introduced me to Smitty, and then Richard becomes a client. And I'm like, oh, there's something to this. So I think it's really with collaboration, it's playing the long game, but also coming from a real go-giver methodology rather than because it's one of the easiest things to do, right? Like I could connect anyone, or any of us can connect anyone, which could change both people's lives or mean hundreds of thousands of dollars, but it takes me like 3 minutes to do. Do you know what I mean? Or maybe 5 minutes to do. And I think the more we do that, it's sort of the law of karma. The more the more good stuff comes back to us. So
true. So very true.
There's a kind of top-down approach that I like to use in this area as well, and that is to look at the clients that we have or that we're going after and say, what else do they need? What else are they purchasing that sits around what we offer? And then how can we make their lives easier? And often some very good partnerships have come out of that. And to give an example, we've had a recent one where we started working with a virtual assistant agency, and we're working with them. They're training all their virtual assistants on our software platform. And so now we can both go to the market and say, look, if you use this software platform, it's got all these benefits, which are great, and we can talk about. But in addition to that, you've got a pool of virtual assistants that you can hire from, and they can come on and start immediately because they're already trained. Not only does the agency train them in social media and marketing, but they also know how to use our particular software platform. And so that's appealing to clients. Now the client's life is a bit easier. They don't have to worry about getting their VA trained on a software platform. That problem's gone away.
Right.
And if you look across the, look to either side of you in terms of who's supplying the client, and see what are they doing and how can we add some value to that and make the client's life easier. Interesting things come out of that.
Absolutely. Nick?
Yes, I was going to say the podcast and collaborations have really worked well for me. So as I mentioned, I've been around 120 plus podcasts now. And I started on the topic of executive loneliness, mental health, and I went on all those special podcasts. But then I wanted to pivot. I wanted a more of a positive spin. Then I went into all the resilience podcasts, and it was about resilience as a more of a positive bounce back into your business kind of game. Then as an athlete myself and an age group Ironman athlete, I wanted to get on, the podcast about running, cycling, swimming, and triathlon. So I could easily use then pivoting across over to the sports podcasts. And as I did that, they appreciated to understand the link between sport and business. And I could then elaborate about that. And I get into the top podcasts in the US with some of the best athletes in there. And now I am studying also about sobriety because I'm sober 6 years, and I'm talking about the mental health and the physical aspects of alcohol in our lives, which is such a big part of society. And because I'd covered all the various areas before and I have a credible voice, it was very easy for me to pivot on getting on all the podcasts especially you have many celebrities also who's interested in sobriety. It's sort of becoming the next sort of vegan trend is to be sober. So now I'm going around the world on tour on all the podcasts talking about sobriety. So I just want to share here that collaborating and using each other to helping each other to pivot across has really worked well for me.
Excellent. A couple of things that I heard in there. One, of course, was what Richard was talking about taking ego out I think that's what I heard you say, right, Richard? That
Yeah, making it
Yep.
inclusive, but also letting go.
yeah, letting go, and part of that holding on is ego, right? Yeah,
And fear as
and
well.
fear,
without a shadow of a doubt,
and
yeah.
fear, absolutely. But it is so important if businesses want to get to that place where they have a business that can scale, where they have a business that can run without them. They have to let go. They have to learn how to do that, and that's an area that I come in as well, an area that I help folks with. But yeah, it's that one's a really important one. And I love what you're all saying about podcasts. Go ahead, John. Go ahead.
No, the biggest problem is that I read something the other day was quite a true thing, is that the CEO should not do tech support, like support the customer. It's because they're the worst person at it. I do it a lot, and it's like you've got to get someone else to do it or whatever, because what happens is you're just too short with them. Like you don't understand that you just want to solve the problem.
Right.
Solving, like you just don't. As a customer service person, come in and like do the fluff stuff as well, and it's like, yeah, you got to remember that sometimes you're not as good as you think you are.
Yeah.
The only problem with podcasting I've found so far is that once you get into the habit of doing them on a regular basis, when you're talking to people in regular life, it's easy to drop into that interviewer mode. And you start asking them questions about, so tell me about where you come from. And before you know it, you're conducting an interview there and then.
Oh, wow. I can see where that could happen. Richard.
Yeah, I've had it happen. It's just at the supermarket with the person behind the checkout. Okay, we need to stop this now.
Holding up a line.
Yeah.
You just always have your phone on record,
Yeah.
so you can capture these off the cuff interviews.
I actually carry around a toy microphone with me these days, just in case. So.
I love it. I love it. Any other last thoughts in this arena of how folks, other ways that they might get started in collaboration? Any last thoughts there? Everybody's pretty.
I think there's so many ways to do it. Like you've got, like there's a book out there written about mastermind dinners. I'm trying to remember the author of it, but where you can get together groups, and I've done a couple of those where you get together groups for like dinners, and you can even, I know when we did it, I did it with a partner, and we would pay for the dinners. So it was amazing collaboration and networks and that sort of thing that you can, because who doesn't want to go out for a free dinner, right? And you get particular niche groups together, and I think that can be really powerful. Starting up your own group, like Ken and I have done in particular niches, I think can be really, really powerful as well. And there was a lady who's written a book about 100 lunches, and she was in Australia, but she came from overseas. I don't know whether it was China or it was another non-English speaking country. And one of the things she did is she set herself a challenge to just reach out to people on LinkedIn and have 100 lunches. And I think that's so there's so many different ways to do it. You've just got to find the way that works for you.
Absolutely. I think something else that was really important that was brought out too was that the collaboration is not about getting something, right? It's about building relationships. It's about serving, and then the receiving comes back, right? But if we approach collaboration with that expectation of I'm going to get a new client, I'm going to receive, then they don't go very far, do they?
No, I think people pick up on that stuff pretty quickly.
Real quickly.
Yeah. But I think I've run lots of events with clients from the day when we're doing accounting software, and we'd hold these, like get a speaker in and basically get the clients to come along, and the level of appreciation comes out of that, and you benefit. Someone gets an idea out of it. It's far better than that, because I tell everybody, so your benefit is something that they'll talk about you in a positive way. So exactly.
And when I'll add one more thing. Sorry,
please. Please.
The other thing I'd say is that for anybody watching or listening to this, don't be afraid of rejection, because not everybody will want to collaborate with you. And anybody that's worked in sales will know that for every win that you get, there's going to be at least one, probably more, where it hasn't gone so well. And, you know, you will talk to lots of people, and some people want to collaborate. Some people, they will collaborate with you, but they're maybe not the greatest people to work with. But, you know, it's not going to be all smooth. So just because somebody doesn't want to talk to you or it doesn't work out, don't take it personally. Maybe review what you've done. Maybe see if you could have approached it differently. But you will get rejected. So learn how to cope with that, because it's not a personal reflection on you. It's just the situation.
Let's flip that coin on its head for a moment and talk about the opposite side of that, where you reject a collaboration. What are reasons that you would not go into a collaborative venture with somebody? Because, you know, you have to make those choices. Not everybody's a perfect fit for you. How do you determine that fit? And how do you handle that when somebody is not a fit for you? Ken, I saw you nod. You got something to add there?
I suppose partly coming out of the events and speaker industry, where the first thing that comes to mind is ethics. Not everyone has an ethical, solid offering, and sometimes you just don't want to be associated for that reason.
Yeah.
But also sometimes it's just not a fit. They have a different customer than you, and there's not enough overlap in your target market to make working together successful.
Right. Where do values come into it, Smitty?
Values all over the place. It's funny because I've been working 35 years with people who keep their word, and I'm used to people doing business that way, and it's always that way. And it's been rare since I've run across people who don't. And maybe since the pandemic started, it seems like they're coming out of the woodwork. John and I have recently run across 7 of them in a row that were that way. Said they were going to do one thing, did something else, and just amazing. So I think the best thing to do with people like that is let them go and just find people who do keep their word, keep people who have values, and just not some twisted sense of self or whatever you want to call it. But you've got to do the best for your client. You've got to do best for your team, and it's not individuals, especially in a collaboration. It's just like a baseball team. If you've got one cancer in the clubhouse, the whole team suffers, and nobody performs the way they're supposed to. So you just got to, nip it in the bud, as Barney Fife says on Andy Griffith.
Those of us old enough to remember that, right?
Well, yeah, it's still on repeat every day. So that's why it came to mind today. Yep.
Richard says, no way. He's not old enough to remember that. Oh, goodness. Yeah. Anybody else have any thoughts on values and how they may have impacted a relationship that you were working on, and the difference in values?
I think the thing you remember here is we always work on the principle: we say what we do and do what we say. And I think a lot of people, that's what a lot of times I get rid of people very quickly on the list, that they promise stuff and never do anything. And so I think that's the thing with collaboration. You got to be careful that you can spread yourself real thin trying to do things for people and then find out they're not doing their side of it. And so I like to test them a little bit first to see if they're actually going to do what they're going to do. And I think that's the thing. A lot of people don't. Like I come across and come in business where you've talked to a competitor where they didn't do what they were saying they were going to do. And they're disappointed, and then they tar you with the same brush. They think you won't do it either. And so I think you've got to be careful that you actually get people who are going to do what they're going to say they're going to do.
Right.
I also think that in amongst all of this, you've got to be true to your own values from the start. Because a lot of the time you might put them to one side because you need the money. You'll do a deal, you'll work with somebody, and any other day you wouldn't work with them. But it's going to come and bite you later on down the line. So it's harder, without a doubt. But I look at it like the concept of a bad boyfriend or a bad girlfriend. They keep promising things are going to happen, but they never do. And
going to change.
Yeah.
I think you take money out of the picture. If you say to yourself, would I make the same decision if money didn't matter?
There you go.
9 times out of 10, the answer is no.
Yeah.
You wouldn't do it. And I think that's the thing. Be really careful that money's not tricking you into it.
And, it's hard to fire a collaborative partner, just like it's hard to fire a client. I've had to do both, and neither one was fun.
I nearly didn't get a job once. I only got applied for one job in my life, 2 jobs in my life. And the guy said, I see you fired clients before. And I said, yeah. I said, I fire clients that are unprofitable. And he didn't like that idea. It was the accounting software. And I said, well, do you want to really spend all your time on something not profitable, or focus on what's profitable? And it's like he was a Jewish man, and he didn't like that idea. He wanted to make sure everybody was like everybody. And it's like, well, hang on a minute, you can't. Like, you just drive yourself insane trying to solve people's problems that aren't solvable. Yeah. And so I think sometimes you got to learn to fire people quickly if they're not working out, because it'll just end up being like a bad boyfriend, bad girlfriend at the end of the day.
Exactly. And sometimes it's personality issues. The one client I recall firing at one point was a bank that, we could do nothing to please that operations officer, and ultimately just said, this isn't working. And my staff were never so happy as the day I fired that client.
Yeah, we've been there. We fired people over time. Like, it was like, all the staff go, we're quitting if you don't fire them.
Yeah. Well, gentlemen, you're not going to believe this, but we're out of time. So it is time for our wrap-up round.
Mm-hmm.
And John is going to lead our wrap-up round. So he's going to call on each of you, including himself, to share final comments about collaboration and your contact information. So,
Okay.
John, take it away.
All righty. I guess I'll start with me. I think collaboration is an interesting thing. And if you go approach it in the right way, I think, and that's what you've got to remember, is that if you don't think about the other person in what you're doing, then it'll end up being a mess. And I think that's the thing, is you got to remember that you give more, you'll get some back. But if you start taking too much, particularly in the early days, then you'll end up, everybody be upset. So really thinking about the other person. If you want to get hold of me, just go to johnnorth.com.au. That's probably the best place, because basically I'll cover all the products and stuff and the books and everything we do in one place. Otherwise I'll send you for a bunch of websites. There's also Evolve Global Publishing if you want to Google that. So really, I think I'll just start picking on people, perhaps.
Just start picking on people.
Cool, nice. I'll pick on Scotty then. So what are your final comments, and how can they get hold of you, Scotty?
Yeah. So I mean, my sort of closing thoughts is just really, in terms of collaboration, playing the long game, I think is really critical. So not being, we can, have the propensity to be, very short-term focused. But it really boils down to optionality. So in terms of the more collaborations, the more relationships you've got going, the more lottery tickets you've got in there. But you never know when one of those lottery tickets is going to fire. So playing the long game, I think, is really critical. One thing I can just say from personal experience is the more relational I've been, the more collaborative I've been, the more my business has personally just flowed, rather than feeling like pushing bricks uphill. So that's from personal experience. And if you want to reach out to me, I'd just go to copywritingthatsells.com.au to get in touch.
Cool, thanks. So Smitty, what are your thoughts on this?
Very similar to what Scott just said. And I look at it as, if you wouldn't hang out with someone, or you wouldn't want to go out to dinner with that person or be with them in your free time, why be with them in your work time if they're going to make you miserable? We just, as I mentioned, went to the Cialdini conference last week, had dinner with a ton of our co-authors every night, and went out and had drinks, dinner, just had a good time, even after working and spending all day together. And just fabulous people with ethics, people who are credible, people with values, who say they're going to do something and then they follow through on it. And it's just wonderful. So those are the people to work with. If you're going to collaborate on a book, I highly recommend John at Evolve Global. He's been a godsend for us. He's been wonderful. And it's the same thing with production. I've been fortunate enough to work with, we had to do a stunt for a short film we did. And we came into Kim Kahana's stunt farm, and he actually was the body double for Charles Bronson for decades. He's in his 90s now, but this is several years ago, and even in his 80s, he took a 30-foot free fall off a tower into some airbags just to show us how it was done. We lit some guys on fire, and I don't think I've had a better time in my life collaborating. We had, I think, 53 stuntmen and actors and actresses and film crew on there. It was fantastic. So just put some fun in it. Work with people that you can have fun with. And I'm at smithprofits.com. I'm easy to find.
Love it.
So how about you, Ken? What are your thoughts?
Cool. I was going to say a good way, if someone's new to collaboration and partnerships, or even just going into a new environment or new community that you haven't dealt with before, I find a good way to approach that is just to put your own interest completely aside initially and just go in and say, how can I help people? How can I add value? Just talk to people. And if you see something that they need, or some relationship that would benefit them, just set it up initially with no thought for yourself, and just know that You do that for a while, you'll, not only will you build a good reputation, but eventually that will come back to you. The people that you help will come back to you and say, what can I do for you? So it's a nice, safe way to get started, especially when you're nobody knows you, is just to go in and see what you can do to help them. Anyway, to reach me, my website's clientflow.marketing.
Cool. Thanks, Ken. I know you've got to go.
Thanks for being here, Ken.
Thanks. See you guys.
Thanks, Ken. So moving on to Nick.
Yes, thank you, John. And I'm looking forward to our next collaboration on book 2, so you can watch out for me soon. I would say that, I agree with what everyone else have said, being of service and having that mindset from the outside. If we, however, want to go a little bit deeper into collaboration, I find it that it's very good to have a conversation about basically setting some kind of collaboration agreement, discussing what is expected here, what can you both expect to be contributing with, and even discuss what would a good collaboration look like. So look forward into the future and define that, because if you both then can agree from the beginning what you're going to collaborate on, then the expectations are set from the beginning, and it's more likely that it's going to be a good partnership between you.
Yeah, we often do heads of agreements with that. Yeah, so that way everybody knows what they're supposed to do. There's no arguments later, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. And Richard.
Well, I'm going to reiterate some of the themes from earlier on, which is don't be afraid to put yourself out there. Okay, and it may be not the natural way that a lot of people are, but you've got to put yourself out there and at least let people know you exist. Yeah. The other part of it is don't be afraid to ask. Because if I hadn't have said to John very cheekily in the very early days, can I ever go at this podcast thing? I wouldn't have done the podcasts I've done. I wouldn't have had, the book. We're working on several other projects, and a whole bunch of clients that I now have are all because of that one question I asked. And so it literally one question turned it around, and it has changed my life and my career as a result.
Yeah, pretty crazy. I mean, I got someone in LinkedIn that approached me years ago that actually she'd connect to you and then say, how can I help you? And then she'd put you in touch with a couple of her LinkedIn connections. And I never saw it. She never actually asked for any money for it ever. Like I didn't think you're not making any money out of this ever. I can't say there's money, but she's just doing it. In the end, we actually got her to do voice and audio book for us. And so it's like you feel obligated to help them when they're helping you. And that's the power of that kind of scenario. So I think that the power of obligation and feeling like you owe someone something helps really in that collaboration process. Because you help them enough, they're going to turn around and say, I need to help you. I can't just let you do the one-way street.
It's a law of reciprocity.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Gentlemen, thank you so much. This was really good. So much great information here. I appreciate all the work that you are doing in the world, each one of you, the difference that you are making. And it was a great honor for me to rub shoulders with you tonight and to meet you and get to know you a bit better. John, thanks so much for bringing this group together. Gentlemen, please stick around for just a moment after we go off air. But it was wonderful. And folks, we will see you next time on Collaboration Conversations. Thanks. Bye for now.